In 2017, I got a phone call from Orange Hospital stating that Mum was in hospital and need to come home ASAP. So I rushed home, and only to find that Mum had had heart problems, and her body, she had all of this fluid on her. Her organs were shutting down. She had so many cardiac arrests. I asked Orange Hospital, can they contact someone, a leading specialist in heart? So they contacted St Vincent's Hospital. She went to Sydney, and whilst in Sydney, she had 3 cardiac arrests. At the time, I was home for a cousin's funeral, Terry's funeral. The night of the wake, 3 a.m. in the morning, I got a phone call to head to Sydney, to come to Sydney straight away. Mum was in ICU. I got to Sydney, she was on life support. I had to make a decision on behalf of Mum, which is really hard to do. But I knew for a fact she didn't want to die. She's too young. I spoke to the professor, and he said that we needed Mum to be in a safe environment in order to get her to the point of being able to survive a transplant. So we had 2 false alarms. That was pretty stressful times for both of us, because with each phone call, it meant saying goodbye. But then it also meant that someone else has passed away. That didn't sit too easy with Mum. She thought that she could blame it on the heart if anything she did do some wrong. She always wanted best for her people. And if she could be the first Aboriginal lady to get there to do it, she proved that it could be done. Because Mum had a left ventricle assist device put in her heart, so when she was put into ICU in Sydney, I had to make that decision to put this device in her heart. That would prolong her long enough to be able to stay alive for a transplant. And throughout the 2 years, like I said, we only got 3 call-ups for hearts. 2 were false alarms. The third one was the one. But we need more people to become donors in order for more people to receive an organ. During the 2 years, Mum found therapy within her art and her culture. She was wanting to know more about the ancestors, and she started speaking about the ancestors, saying that they're always watching us, they're always with us, they're guiding us. She found it hard to be away from Wellington and to be off country whilst healing. We got up, was dressed and ready to go to St Vincent's, to the clinic. But before we jumped in the car, we got a phone call to say that St Vincent's has received an organ and it's compatible with Mum. So the heart transplant registrar rang us and told us to come ASAP. St Vincent's called back straight away and said, don't worry about driving. We've kicked 2 people off the plane. Make your way to the airport. And when she was sitting next to the window, and she said, is this what it feels like to be an angel? So there was only me and her that went to Sydney for the transplant. They took her straight in. I gave her a last shower that morning. She laid on the bed. I've got footages of her laying on the bed and being pushed up to theatre and saying goodbye. But that's what she said, put your tears away, it's not goodbye yet. I was waiting in the waiting room and the organ had arrived, and the lady who brought the organ come out to see me and told me that it's perfect, there should be no complications. And they told me, oh, well, what's the point of sitting here? You may as well go home. So I come back to Canberra, and then I had a shower, got Mum's things, went back to Sydney to be there for when she woke up. But she was already awake by the time I arrived. They took her back up onto the ward. She was up, talking, walking. I said that I could give her a shower before I left. She said, no, I've got the heart now, it's beating fine. And she was going like that. It's beating fine. You get on the road now and come back on the weekend. I said, no, I'll be back again tomorrow. So I got back to Canberra about 11 o'clock at night. 2 o'clock in the morning. The phones are ringing, but the partner couldn't hear it. I didn't hear it. It was the first real sleep we had for 2 years. And then the police were at the front door. They were banging on the door. And the partner went and answered it because I knew what kind of bang it was. All I was doing was like, what's wrong, what's wrong? Then the police come in to tell me that Mum had passed away. She was a beautiful officer too. She was crying her eyes out. Mum was preparing everything in her life to live a long life. Because in the 2 years, she's lost, you know, an uncle, a brother, a nephew, a first cousin, her house burnt down. So I was trying to relocate her life, you know, change her lifestyle, get her another place, get her back into her art, and to hopefully become a teacher or something. Because she had so much to give. And she was painting up hearts for awareness. She had a big heart, and that's what I always say, she's left her heart for us all to share within her paintings. I promised my mother that for the rest of my life, it's not a promise that I could ever break or anything like that. It's something that I've always been passionate about, is blood, organ and tissue donation. Without it, you know, people are left in limbo, not knowing, and generally don't survive long enough to be able to get one. So I do urge everyone, it doesn't matter what age you are, to become an organ donor, blood, tissue and an organ donor, because it's giving and it's a gift of life.